In the dead of night, amidst a torrential downpour, a gangster entourage escorts their formidable boss to a desolate temple hidden deep within the woods. Little do they know, what awaits them inside isn't a sacred sanctuary, but a makeshift operating room. Living a life outside the law, the boss can't risk a hospital visit and needs a clandestine brain surgery. The surgeon who will undertake this risky procedure is Dr. Choy. Don't let her alluring appearance fool you. She possesses a truly eccentric and, some might say, twisted personality. One glance at the intricate brain tattoo on her back hints at her unconventional nature. Her regular accomplices in these illicit surgeries are her assistant Young-ju and the anesthesiologist Hyun-ho. The nurse, Miran, however, is a fresh face in this shadowy world of underground medicine. The surgery commences, and Choy expertly begins the incision, exposing the boss's skull. Outside, the anxious gangsters nervously monitor their leader's condition. Brain surgery demands absolute focus, even under normal circumstances. Suddenly, a loud commotion breaks the silence, startling Choy. The gangsters erupt into a heated argument outside, trying to determine the culprit. Choy remains silent, her eyes closed, slowly rotating her neck. Hyun-ho recognizes this telltale sign of an impending outburst and frantically signals Young-ju to restore order. Only after the gangsters outside have been subdued does Choy reopen her eyes, resuming the delicate process of sawing through the boss's skull. After draining the excess blood, Choy instructs Hyun-ho to wake the patient immediately. The shocked male nurse protests, warning of the inherent dangers of such a move. But this is Choy's signature high-risk, high-reward surgical style. To remove the tumor without damaging other vital areas, the only way is to awaken the patient and monitor his responses. Hyun-ho reluctantly follows her order, ceasing the anesthetic and administering oxygen to bring the boss back to consciousness. Choy engages in casual conversation with the now awake gangster, while simultaneously using a stimulator to probe different regions of his brain, meticulously tracking his reactions to pinpoint the tumor's exact location. Meanwhile, Professor Deok-hee, Choy's mentor and Korea's leading neurosurgeon, is performing his brain tumor removal. Mid-surgery, an assistant notices the professor's eye twitching uncontrollably. This brief lapse in concentration earns the assistant a swift and angry dismissal from the operating room. Despite the interruption, the professor's surgery ultimately concludes successfully. As Professor Choy emerges from the OR, he is met by a detective investigating Chairman Min, a broker who arranges illegal surgeries. The police have raided one of Min's surgical facilities and discovered a video that appears to depict a brain surgery. Unable to understand the nature of the procedure, they seek Professor Choy's expert opinion. The professor's assistant confidently asserts that the surgery depicted is far too complex to have been performed in such a rudimentary operating room. He suggests that only Professor Choy himself possesses the skills to successfully execute such a procedure in South Korea, implying the patient in the video is likely dead. Professor Choy offers no comment, simply promising to review the footage more closely. Once the detective leaves, the assistant remarks that the hands in the video appear to belong to a woman, possibly Choy. Irritated, Choy dismisses his assistant and immediately calls someone, ordering them to find Chairman Min, the illicit surgery broker. The person on the other end promises to locate Min within a week, but Choy stresses the situation's urgency, demanding faster results. Back at the temple, the gangster boss's surgery has been a resounding success. Choy visits him, playfully asking him how many fingers she's holding up. Still slightly dazed, the boss doesn't answer, simply expressing his gratitude. Meanwhile, Miran excitedly counts her earnings, but her expression sours upon discovering a mere 5 million won. Clearly dissatisfied with the paltry sum, moments later, Miran confronts Choy with a smug air. It turns out they've never met, but Miran has heard rumors about Choy and Professor Choy. Choy remains silent, unfazed by Miran's taunting smirk. Young-ju reveals that Miran is a nurse, hired directly by the gang. She was fired from a hospital for negligence and subsequently worked at a nursing home, where she abused mute and paralyzed patients, leading to her dismissal from that position as well. Desperate, she resorted to participating in these illicit surgeries, and Young-ju believes she's unlikely to rat them out. Miran enters the boss's room, injecting him with an unknown substance. She then proceeds to rifle through Choy's bag, finding her business card. It reveals that Choy runs a pharmacy, her medical license having been revoked long ago. Miran continues her taunts about Professor Choy, but Choy ignores her. Upon entering the boss's room, she finds him unconscious. Miran admits to injecting him with a sedative, explaining it was the only way for them to talk privately with so many eyes watching. She reveals that she only received 5 million won, assuming Seok's fee was much higher. Miran demands 2 million won per month from Seok, threatening to report her to the police otherwise. We're partners now, she argues. You should at least give me that much. Seok considers for a moment and agrees, acknowledging her need for a nurse. But Miran clarifies, I won't be your nurse. 2 million is just the price for my silence. For your safety. Seok smirks. You're right. Safety always comes first. Give me your account number later. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ra accompanies Professor Choy to meet Chairman Min. After viewing the surgery video, Min denies any involvement. He claims a group of Chinese individuals sent him the video, asking him to identify the surgeon. He refused, stating that brain surgery wasn't his specialty. Professor Choy requests the full video to determine the surgery's outcome, but Min insists that's all he received. Unable to get any further through Min, Professor Choy decides to confront the surgeon directly, convinced he already knows her identity. Mrs. Ra, overhearing this, begins to suspect who it might be, wondering, could it be that girl from all those years ago? Earlier that day, Professor Choy had dinner with Thon Cha-young and his wife. His old friend praises him for being a renowned genius, rising from poverty in the countryside to become the top graduate of medical school. When the topic of the brain surgery video arises, Professor Choy is suddenly struck by a severe headache, excusing himself to the restroom to take pain medication. Back at the abandoned temple, the gangsters are disposing of the evidence from the past few days, burning everything in a large pit. Young-ju and Seok collect the medical equipment. The boss has made a full recovery and is ready to be discharged. He expresses his immense gratitude to Seok, offering his assistance should she ever need anything. Seok, however, insists on handling her own problems. The gangsters finally escort their boss to his waiting car. Hyun-ho will accompany him for a week to monitor his recovery. Seok tells Miran she can leave once the cleanup is complete. Miran, anticipating her payment, is eager to finish. Later that night, unable to find her water bottle, Miran, accustomed to rummaging through other people's belongings, opens Seok's bag and gulps down the water from a bottle inside. Young-ju goes to retrieve a cooler for Seok and finds her standing contemplatively before the Buddha statue. Seok makes a big deal about the importance of a cooler, telling Young-ju not to ask questions, but just to rush it to Hyun-ho. She warns him not to open it, saying it's contaminated. Only one gangster, a blonde-haired man, remains. Seok tells him to go relax at the sauna in town and return in the morning to finish cleaning up. The gangster, finding this a reasonable suggestion, readily agrees and leaves. Now, only Seok and Miran, who are lying unconscious after drinking from Seok's water bottle, remain at the temple. Driving down the road, Young-ju recalls Seok's contemplative stance before the Buddha statue and abruptly pulls over. He opens the cooler, expecting something critical, only to find it filled with popsicles. Worried that something is amiss, he immediately turns the car around and races back to the temple. Miran wakes up to find her bag missing. Panicked, she searches frantically and eventually locates it in the operating room. As she gleefully recounts her money, Seok strangles her from behind, pulling the ligature tight, leaving Miran no chance to fight back. She kills with a chilling giggle, a truly disturbing display. By the time Young-ju arrives, Seok has finished. She calmly places Miran's payment envelope in the donation box next to the makeshift operating table. Such a waste, I sent you away, she says. You have a shovel in your trunk, right? The next morning, back home, Young-ju stares at the dirt-covered shovel, still shaken. Seeing Seok playfully interacting with her dog, it's hard to believe she's a cold-blooded killer. Learning that Seok owns 3 Rottweilers, a breed known for its aggression, Professor Choy remarks that her dogs are just like her. Mrs. Ra observes that Professor Choy and Seok share many similarities, including their intensity, speculating that perhaps all geniuses are like that. You both wish to die in the operating room, don't you? She asks. On days without illicit surgeries, Seok works as a pharmacist in her shop. An elderly customer asks where she's been lately. Seok replies, some nasty piece of work tried to extort money from me, as if I owed her something. So many idiots in this world. What did you do? The customer asks. Seok casually replies, I strangled her to shut her up. As Seok leaves her shop, a man from the restaurant across the street stares intently at her. He has a thug-like appearance and wears an ankle monitor, indicating a recently released dangerous criminal. Seeing a police car patrolling, he ducks back inside. It turns out the thug is the brother of Mary, the restaurant owner. Youngju asks why the man is staring at her. Seok nonchalantly replies, "Probably because I'm beautiful. But it's annoying." "So, are you going to make him disappear too?" Youngju asks, "Do you think I'm crazy?" Seok retorts, "You are crazy." Youngju insists, "You tricked me into leaving so you could take care of that nurse. That was self-defense." Seok argues, "I save one life has to go. It's better for the planet." Just then Professor Choy calls, informing her that he's almost at her house. Memories from years past flood back. Professor Choy had kicked Seok out of an operating room for making a mistake. She stubbornly refused to leave, forcing him to physically drag her out. Seok flew into a rage, desperate to finish her surgery. As Professor Choy walked away, she chased after him and tried to strangle him within the fourth line. People rushed in to intervene. The professor slapped her hard. "Your impulsiveness is your problem," he yelled. Seok spat at him, earning another slap. "Listen, Seok," he said menacingly. "You will never set foot in an operating room again. The very place you claim to live for." For Seok, being barred from surgery was no different from losing her life itself. She knelt all day outside the hospital in the pouring rain, begging Professor Choy for forgiveness. He showed no mercy, coldly walking past as Seok cried out in despair. Back in the present, Professor Choy arrives at Seok's house, bearing gifts. He chatters about Seok's former classmates, some now department heads, others lecturers. "If you were still with me, you'd be a full professor by now," he remarks. Seok tells him to cut the small talk and get to the point. He shows her the brain surgery video, praising her improved skills. Seok, pleased, goes to cut him a piece of cake. Suddenly, the professor is hit with another agonizing headache. He reveals he has a brainstem glioma. Seok suggests he have one of his star pupils perform the surgery. The professor confesses that the tumor's location is extremely challenging. The surgery must be flawless, leaving no residual effects, especially on his hands. As he intends to continue operating, "I'll find a place," he says. "You just need to perform the surgery." Seok laughs, calling him crazy. "I'm not licensed to operate anymore." Seeing her refusal, Professor Choy threatens to report her illegal surgery on the gangster. Enraged, Seok accuses him of constantly trying to destroy her. "If you hate me that much, just cut off my hands," she yells. As he reaches the door, another searing headache forces him to collapse on the steps. He fumbles for his pain medication, dropping the bottle. Seok rushes out and kicks it away. Consumed by past resentment, she crushes the bottle under her foot, her manic laughter echoing as she grinds the remnants into the ground. Seemingly releasing years of pent-up rage, Youngju runs out and stops her, then calls an ambulance for Professor Choy. The nosy neighbor across the street witnesses the entire scene. That night, Seok lies awake, tormented by vivid memories of her volatile youth. She recalls her time as a surgical resident in the neurosurgery department of the medical school. Seeing a test posted on the bulletin board, she brazenly tears it off and completes it right there. An announcement is made that the renowned Professor Choy is returning from America to teach at the university. Overjoyed, as Professor Choy is her idol, Seok races to find him, even throwing her backpack aside to run faster. Meanwhile, Professor Song, the head of neurosurgery, is filling Professor Choy in on Seok. He describes her as a prodigy, entering university at 17 and graduating at the top of her class. He warns Professor Choy to be careful, calling her a ticking time bomb, not normal, prone to talking incessantly for hours, a mix of complaints, bragging, and questions. He admits, however, that she's a brilliant surgeon. Before Professor Choy even has time to unpack in his new office, Seok bursts in, a disturbingly enthusiastic grin on her face. She presents him with the completed test, asking if she got it right. While waiting, she helps herself to his bread, bad-mouthing the department head for falling asleep during surgery and plagiarizing research papers. She then boldly declares herself Professor Choy's student since the day she entered medical school. "I've been waiting for you to return from Boston." She gushes. "I've read all your papers, even memorized them. Every word is spot on." Professor Choy hands back her test, and a smug look of satisfaction spreads across her face. That night, in her room plastered with neurology notes, Seok beams at her exam paper, marked "Perfect" by Professor Choy. She rushes through the rain to the hospital, excitedly declaring her desire to be his student. "Teach me everything you know," she implores. "Every piece of knowledge, every technique. I've staked my entire life on this. My dream is to die while performing surgery." Professor Choy recognizes in Seok the same obsessive passion he has for the field. He asks Mrs. Ra if she has ever seen a human brain. You have to see it to understand. He explains. The brain vibrates, just like a heart. It has no lid, and should never be opened. But I've been fortunate enough to witness it. It's so fragile, yet possesses an indescribable beauty and intricacy. I love the brain so much that I'm willing to die in the operating room. Mrs. Ra guesses that he likes Seok, but he brushes her off. Annoyed. Unable to dissuade Seok, Professor Choy approaches Hyen-ho, presenting him with a medical file. He knows Hyen-ho's clinic treats patients rejected by larger hospitals, and that he regularly volunteers his services. Professor Choy taunts him, saying he's just like his mentor, destined for a life of poverty and wasted talent, caring for the homeless in his tiny clinic. Hyen-ho, irritated, is about to refuse, arguing that the professor should perform the surgery himself. It's then that Professor Choy reveals the file is his own. He can't operate on his brain. When Hyen-ho takes the file to Seok, she immediately refuses, saying, "Let him die." Hyen-ho laments her wasted talent. He tells her that if she helps Professor Choy, he'll convince the medical association to reinstate her license. "Don't you want to stop operating in the shadows?" he asks. Seok argues that no reputable hospital will hire her with her tarnished record. Even with her own clinic, she wouldn't be allowed to operate. "I'm fine now," she insists. "I like the way things are." That evening, in a fit of rage, Seok burns her medical textbooks and papers, ordering Young-ju to bring her the rest from inside. He clumsily trips, scattering the papers. Picking them up, he sees they're all marked. Perfect. Now turning to Ash. The next morning, the thug, Sing-yu, taunts Seok about the incident with Professor Choi's medication. "You seem stressed," he says. "Let's go to Seoul and have a few drinks." He leaves when Seok's employee arrives. Later, Seok sees him abusing his sister, a common occurrence. Seok invites her employee to lunch at Mary's restaurant, hoping his behavior will stop with customers present. It works, and the thug leers at them, flashing his ankle monitor. Seeing Mary's bruised face, the employee wants to call the police, but Seok says it's pointless. Mary will just claim she fell. Hyen-ho calls, saying he has an emergency surgery scheduled for that night. Seok eagerly accepts. Young-ju finds a partially burned photograph. It shows a smiling Seok standing with Professor Choy and another female doctor. After class, Young-ju seeks out the female doctor in the photo. She tells him about Seok's first major surgery. She was a genius, but sometimes also a fool. She recalls. Back then, Seok often covered surgeries for Professor Song while he was out drinking. Everyone assumed Professor Choy would award Seok the research position at Boston University Medical School. Instead, he chose Yu Young. Furious, Seok stormed into Professor Choi's office to demand an explanation. Encountering Yu Young's mother there, she accused her of buying the position for her son. "How can you be so educated and yet so base?" she raged. Professor Choy, enraged, slapped her hard. After that, Seok was completely barred from surgeries, the most unbearable punishment for her. Almost a year later, while Professor Choy was away at a conference, the department head allowed Seok to operate on a patient. Mid-surgery, Professor Choy returned and ordered her to stop. She ignored him and continued. When Yu Young intervened, she explained that the patient had been in a serious car accident and required emergency surgery. With all the senior professors absent, she took action. Furthermore, the surgery was progressing smoothly and nearing completion. "Why kick me out when the patient is still on the operating table?" she pleaded. But Professor Choy had her removed anyway. That evening, Seok called Young-ju, but he didn't answer. When she arrived at the designated meeting point, Hyen-ho was waiting, and they prepared for surgery. They waited all night, but no patient arrived. Seok realized there probably wasn't a patient to begin with. As they left, they spotted Professor Choi's car nearby. He offered her a position at Boston University Medical School. "Go there and perform all the surgeries you want," he said. Seok countered that if she operated on him, she could easily nick a nerve and paralyze his hand. The professor wasn't afraid, believing she was too proud to make such a mistake. "I'll make that mistake," Seok threatened, "because I hate you to the core. I hope you end up rotting in some remote nursing home, alone, with no one to care for you. I hope you take so many painkillers that you lose your mind, lying in your filth. Remember your glorious past, once a great man, now reduced to nothing. You still have no self-control," the professor observed. "But you will save me and go to Boston." He instructed Mrs. Ra to drive away. Mrs. Ra questioned his faith in Seok. Aren't you afraid she'll sabotage the surgery? She asked. The professor was confident she wouldn't. A news report announced Professor Choi's potential 10th consecutive prestigious surgery award. COK angrily snatched the remote and turned off the TV. Young Ju wanted to go to Boston with her, but COK refused. Everything I have is here, she said. My house, my dogs, my pharmacy, my restaurant. Young Ju was confused. What restaurant? He asked. The one I eat at every day, she replied. It's practically mine. Then she asked, why didn't you answer my call yesterday? As COK was giving Sinju a hard time, he flashed his ankle monitor at her from across the street. Annoyed, she still went to Mary's restaurant for lunch. Meanwhile, Professor Choy called his colleague at Boston University Medical School, requesting more pain medication. Alan Kim was busy and couldn't return to Korea immediately. I'll let you know when I book my ticket, COK says, dismissing Professor Choy. His headaches are increasing in frequency and intensity. He's barely holding on. That night, COK spots Sinju lurking outside. She investigates and finds cigarette butts and beer cans strewn in a corner. The thug has been watching her. Some boar hunters approach, mentioning that Mary plans to sell her restaurant and split the money with her abusive brother. You eat there every day, they say to COK. What will you do? She shrugs it off, saying there are other restaurants. But inwardly, she's seething. Why does everyone keep messing with me? She thinks. This is mine, my restaurant. I want him gone. Young Ju frantically tries to dissuade her, saying he's busy studying for exams and can't help her this week. COK relents. But the next day, she sees Mary with fresh bruises. Sinju, now free of his ankle monitor, stares at COK with a predatory gaze. But he has no idea who he's dealing with. COK pretends to forget her umbrella, and, as expected, he follows her, inviting her for drinks in Seoul. She agrees to go out with him, then laces his drink with a sedative. He drinks it without suspicion, even complimenting the taste. She waits for him to pass out, telling him to sit while she gets ready. Soon, he's deeply asleep. He wakes up bound and gagged on a large plastic sheet. He struggles and screams, but the gag muffles his cries. COK smiles reassuringly. It's okay, she says, before stabbing him repeatedly, with a chillingly familiar twisted grin. Within minutes, he's dead. Young Ju is studying at the library when COK calls. He immediately knows what she's done. Sure enough, she tells him to clean up her house. She drives the body to a remote forest, turns up the music, and begins digging. Meanwhile, Young Ju races home and gathers cleaning supplies. He finds Sinju's clothes and wallet wrapped in plastic and burns them. He sprays disinfectant and turns off the lights, revealing a floor stained with blood. Horrified, he uses specialized cleaning agents to erase the evidence. Just then, a patrolling police car notices the burning trash in the middle of the night. Suspicious, the officer approaches. Young Ju, seeing this, hides inside, holding his breath. COK has dug a large hole. As she drags the body towards it, she notices a flickering flashlight in the distance. She quickly turns off her lights and hides behind her car. The figure approaches and discovers Sinju's body. As they move towards her, COK prepares to attack. The flashlight blinds her momentarily. When she can see again, she's stunned to find the figure is none other than Professor Choy. Years earlier, before their falling out, COK observed Professor Choy warmly greeting an older man. Yu Young explained that it was Professor Myung Jin, a former classmate visiting from Los Angeles. Professor Myung Jin introduced his son, Kiang, to Professor Choy. It was the first time COK had seen Professor Choy, so genuinely happy. The Boston research position hadn't been officially announced yet, but COK was confident she'd get it. Yu Yang was surprised to see Professor Choi's lamp in COK's storm room. She casually claimed she'd asked for it, smugly implying favoritism. However, COK found the professor's closeness with Professor Kim suspicious. It turned out Professor Kim was there to ask Professor Choy to perform surgery on him. Nurse Na mentioned that Professor Choy was very anxious about the operation, as the patient was a friend. COK was shocked to learn that Professor Choy chose Yu Yang to assist, not her. The next day, she dismissed Yu Yang, claiming he had a sudden stomachache, and took his place. While requesting a scalpel, she accidentally cut Professor Choi's hand. He looked at her with a puzzled expression. He had to leave to tend to the wound, and COK confidently assured him she'd handle the rest. The surgery was a success, but Professor Choy knew the cut wasn't accidental. COK calmly confessed, "A surgical error wouldn't look good on your record, would it? We see right through each other. I know you intended to botch the surgery discreetly. That's why you chose Yu Yang instead of me. You knew I'd notice. You hate him, don't you?" You seem so tense, so unnatural." Professor Choy didn't respond, but when he stopped her from following him, she knew he was furious. Her lack of social awareness was astounding, confronting him so directly. Back in the present, recognizing Professor Choy, Seok scoffs and walks past him to pull the body into the grave. "What if we get caught?" he asks. "You'll be in prison for life." Seok replies that her life has always been a mess. "At worst, I'll kill myself. Who cares about prison?" He continues to urge her to go to Boston and start over. She'd rather die than operate on him, and dares him to call the police. He still needs her to perform his surgery, so he can't. Suddenly, Mrs. Ra calls. She waited too long in the car and went looking for him. He nervously directs her towards the village. She asks what Seok is doing. He lies, saying she was burying her dog. He finally leaves, and Seok resumes burying the body. The next day, the police visit Mary's restaurant to investigate Sinju's disappearance. Seok and Youngju are eating there. The police don't know he's dead, just worried that he's removed his ankle monitor and might cause trouble. Seok calmly claims she hasn't seen him since yesterday. When the police leave, Seok expresses her relief that Mary won't be selling the restaurant after all. "I can still eat here every day," she says. A perfect ending. Suddenly, her employee informs her that some officials are looking for her. It's the Ministry of Health, investigating her pharmacy. Hyun-ho's clinic is also being investigated. It must be Professor Choi's doing. Hyun-ho decides to suspend his illicit surgeries until things quiet down. The 30-day suspension of Seok's pharmacy sends her into a rage. She immediately calls Professor Choy to confront him. He tells her he's in Busan for work, and she can come there if she wants to talk. Seok is practically speechless with anger. Youngju tells her to breathe and calm down, but it doesn't help. He then suggests she think of the most peaceful and happy moment of her life. Seok closes her eyes and visualizes the operating room, especially the times assisting Professor Choy, learning everything from him without reservation. Seok and Youngju arrive in Busan, where Professor Choy is about to receive the prestigious Ikeda Medical Award. Youngju hopes that one day Seok will also be famous and recognized for her talent. She dismisses this, saying her life is over, then teases him. "Why do you care so much? Do you like me? I thought we liked each other." He replies, "Of course we do. You're mine. I belong to you, like your phone, right?" Later in the restroom, Seok overhears some juicy gossip from reporters. Mrs. Ikeda, the award's primary sponsor, has a son with a severe brain condition. No doctor is willing to operate because the case is incredibly difficult, almost impossible. No one wants to risk their reputation. A triumphant smile spreads across Seok's face. This is her chance for revenge against Professor Choy. She had planned to meet him the next day, but now she had changed her mind. He still thinks he's the best. She thinks he needs to be humiliated. Youngju, exasperated by her craziness, warns her not to kill him. That night, Seok goes to Mrs. Ikeda's hotel room. Fortunately, Mrs. Ikeda recognizes her from a meeting in Tokyo, where Professor Choy introduced them. Seok shows her a video of a brainstem glioma surgery she performed. 9 university hospitals had refused the case because the child also had hemophilia, the same condition as Mrs. Ikeda's son. Operating on such a complex case, with the added complication of hemophilia, was a huge gamble, so no doctor was willing to take it. Seok explains her surgical plan in detail. If the boy bleeds during tumor removal, the surgery becomes a race against time. She shows Mrs. Ikeda the video of her previous surgery, a total of 5 hours and 23 minutes, and how the child survived. Even a nicked blood vessel could have been fatal. Seok, however, made no mistakes. Mrs. Ikeda worries that her son is younger and might not be as resilient. Seok assures her she can complete the surgery within 4 hours. Her condition? To make Professor Choy suffer. Mrs. Ikeda opens the door, seemingly disagreeing. The next morning, Seok checks if Mrs. Ikeda has changed her mind. To her surprise, Mrs. Ikeda refuses, wanting to maintain the integrity of the award. She calls Seok despicable and manipulative, questioning why she would entrust her son's life to her. Moments later, Seok sees Mrs. Ikeda warmly greeting Professor Choy. Seok is furious but can do nothing. Yu Yang spots her and asks what she's doing there, accusing her of sabotage. Seok ignores him and drives away. Meanwhile, at Boston University Medical School, Dr. Alan Kim is reviewing the surgery video sent by Professor Choy. He's stunned by the flawless execution of Seok's technique. Professor Choy calls, urging him to return to Korea for his surgery. "If I get to collaborate with her, I'm in," Kim says. "It's your honor, not mine," Choy retorts. When Yu Yang reports seeing COK, Professor Choy isn't surprised. He instructs Yu Yang to reserve a seat for her at tomorrow's ceremony. At the banquet, Professor Choy hears someone call, "Professor," and momentarily thinks it's COK. It's someone else, but the incident reveals how much he still thinks about his former student. Mrs. Ikeda greets Professor Choy and asks about the student he once praised so highly. Surprisingly, he doesn't speak ill of COK, instead, praising her exceptional skills. "Look at those fools who think they're so talented," he says. "She's better than 100 of them combined." COK never hesitates in the operating room. She never entertains the thought of failure, and she has never failed. That night, Mrs. Ikeda visits COK and agrees to let her operate on her son. She warns COK that there will be consequences if she fails. COK accepts without hesitation. She immediately calls Hyun-ho, telling him to fly to Japan immediately. Mrs. Ikeda escorts COK and Young Ju on her private jet. While she's anxious, COK remains confident and relaxed. Before entering the operating room, Mrs. Ikeda bows, begging COK to save her son. COK calmly greets the young patient and sets the timer. The surgery begins. The boy is positioned sitting up to reduce pressure and bleeding. Hyun-ho arrives just in time to join the Japanese surgical team, assisting COK, while Young Ju and Mrs. Ikeda anxiously wait outside. Suddenly, the boy's hemophilia acts up, and blood sprays onto Seok's face. The situation becomes critical. The Japanese doctors want to stop the surgery and rush him to the ER, but COK ignores them and continues. When Mrs. Ikeda bursts in, her son's blood is pooling on the floor. She's terrified, but COK remains focused. The next day at the Ikeda Award ceremony, everyone expects Professor Choy to win for the 10th time. Instead, the vice president of the Ikeda Foundation announces the winner is a Spanish doctor. While the audience is stunned into silence, Professor Choy is the first to applaud. Mrs. Ikeda appears, looks at Professor Choy, and then directs his gaze towards COK in the audience. "I won," COK mouths, a triumphant smirk on her face. Professor Choy, however, remains impassive. Hyun-ho reports that the boy is recovering well. COK is elated, relishing her revenge against Professor Choy. She runs into Kiang, Professor Kim's son. She asks about his father, and Kiang recounts what happened. After the surgery, his father recovered well. One day, Kiang returned to his room to find his father gone. Professor Kim called, saying he wanted to live alone, free. He disappeared without a trace. The police assumed he simply left, but Kiang didn't believe it. Two detectives discover the scene of an illegal surgery and call Professor Choy for assistance. He's not surprised about losing the award. Mrs. Ikeda had told him about Seok's offer. She was willing but hesitant, unsure of Seok's capabilities. Professor Choy, however, vouched for COK, urging Mrs. Ikeda to give her a chance. That night, COK meets Professor Choy to gloat and show off her success. He congratulates her, saying she did well, but not as well as he did in his youth. COK asks about Professor Kim's disappearance. Before Professor Choy can explain, she accuses him. "You killed him, didn't you? What friend? Stop lying. You kept me from going to Boston to punish me for saving the patient you wanted dead. Isn't that right? That's when you started hating me. You're pathetic," Professor Choy says, leaving without another word. Later, Professor Choy accompanies the two detectives to the abandoned temple, where COK operated on the gangster boss. Police at 9 units are searching the area. Detective Yang reveals that Chairman Min was the informant. He mentioned brain surgery, which is why Detective Yang contacted Professor Choy. In the operating room, Professor Choy imagines COK. He tries to mislead Detective Yang. "There's no electricity here," he says. "Even the greatest surgeon couldn't operate in these conditions." Suddenly, an officer calls Detective Yang outside. The 9 unit has discovered a buried body, the nurse COK strangled. Back in the past, before Professor Kim's disappearance, COK called in sick, surprising Professor Choy, as there was an important surgery scheduled. COK never misses those. He can't find her at her dorm. Yu Yang mentions she went home to get winter clothes. Professor Choy asks Yu Yang to drive him to Seok's house. She answers the door with bruises on her face. Professor Choy notices a pile of books outside a storage shed. Yu Yang explains that COK rents the house cheaply from an elderly woman she's close to, though they're not related. Professor Choy finds this odd. Yu Yang asks about her injuries, but she brushes it off and invites them in for coffee. Professor Choy sends Yu Yang to buy medicine for COK, so he can speak to her privately. He asks directly why she called in sick. "Tell me the truth. Don't play games. We're very much alike. I see right through you." COK, flustered, lies about slipping and falling. Sensing his disbelief, She excuses herself to the restroom, urging Yu Yang to take Professor Choy back. Just tell him the pharmacy was closed, she whispers. Come right back. Yu Yang, seeing her distress, agrees. Returning from the restroom, she doesn't see Professor Choy. She panics and runs to the shed, but it's too late. He's discovered the body inside. She tries to feign ignorance. Who is this? I don't know him, but then breaks down, confessing. She recounts how walking home from the bus stop, she was attacked from behind as she opened her door. She bit the attacker's hand, pulled out her switchblade, and stabbed him in the neck. It was self-defense. COK insists. I'll bury him in the woods tonight. Can you handle it yourself? Professor Choy asks, then leaves without further comment, as if it's no big deal. COK is stunned, then chases after him. Is something wrong? She asks. Nothing, he replies. See you tomorrow. Back in the present, after discovering Miran's body, the police launch a large-scale search around the temple. COK, undeterred, watches from a distance. Criminals always return to the scene of the crime. She muses. Young Ju is horrified, noticing a suppressed smile on her face. Why are you like a psychopath? He asks. This is exciting. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Feeling important. Do you think I'm crazy? She retorts, confident she's erased all evidence. Just then, she sees Professor Choy and her expression changes. Detective Yang finds a bottle of mannitol, a diuretic used in brain surgery, among the burned debris. The police discover Miran's nursing bag. Yu Yang brings Professor Choy his laptop. They turn to see COK, playing with a police dog. She introduces herself as Professor Choy's student, there to assist, bragging to Detective Lee about her Rottweilers and her affinity for dogs. Professor Choy pulls her aside, angrily telling her she shouldn't be there. She assumes he's seeking revenge for the Ikeda Award, or trying to coerce her into operating on him. He calls her a pathetic fool, going around killing people. She retorts, you got rid of Professor Kim too. We're the same. I'm free now. She continues, I'll call you when I find his body. As COK walks past Detective Yang, he recognizes her as the woman who caused trouble for Professor Choy. He wonders what she's doing there. COK tells Kiang that Professor Choy killed his father. They're meeting to investigate. Young Ju refuses to go, staying behind to pray for her sanity. Kiang reveals someone claimed to have seen his father in a mental hospital, now closed due to patient abuse allegations. COK notices scars on Kiang's wrists, suggesting suicidal tendencies. He's located the former security guard from the mental hospital, who confirms Professor Kim was a patient there. He sent Kiang an email after seeing a missing person report, but Kiang only contacted him recently. He recalls a surgical scar on Professor Kim's head, revealed during a haircut. A sketch confirms it's consistent with brain surgery. They request access to the abandoned hospital. While waiting for the security guard to find the key, Kiang became strangely agitated, excusing himself to the restroom to compose himself. When Seok inquired about any visitors, the guard mentioned a flower delivery person who had pushed the patient around in a wheelchair. Seok excitedly showed him Professor Choi's picture, but the guard couldn't identify him. Meanwhile, Professor Choy was aware of Seok's meeting with Ki Young, having sent Mrs. Ra to tail him. Mrs. Ra remarked on the striking resemblance between the professor and Seok, but he insisted their natures were vastly different. Seok, reviewing LSG's medical records, discovered the hospital had been administering an unreasonably high dosage of medication. The security guards still had no way to prove LSG was Professor Kim, infuriating Ki Young, who suspected a scam to collect insurance money. Remembering he'd contacted someone who photographed patients, the guard frantically called a colleague for the picture. However, his colleague was mountain climbing and couldn't send it until he returned home, forcing another frustrating wait. An impatient Seok showed the guard Dr. Choi's photo again, but he drew a blank. Mrs. Ra, after meeting with the forensic specialist, learned the hair found on the victim's clothing belonged to a Rottweiler. She planned to inform the police the following afternoon. Professor Choy, after hearing Mrs. Ra's report, instructed her to handle the situation discreetly, ensuring no loose ends. Lost in thought, he reminisced, when Seok often overworked herself to the point of sleep deprivation. Yu Yang believed she was addicted to drugs, but the professor knew her true addiction was surgery. The mysteries of the brain and nervous system held a peculiar fascination for Seok, to the extent that she viewed sleep and food as mere inconveniences. The professor, concerned for her well-being, insisted on proper rest and nutrition, confiscating her focus, enhancing pills. Seok understood his concern. Back in the present, Ki Young and Seok anxiously awaited the photograph, but the colleague didn't answer his phone. The guard asked them to return the next day. promising to retrieve the picture personally in the morning. Suddenly, Yu Yong flew into a rage, demanding to see the picture immediately. Seok offered to tend the wound. As he cut away the glove, he saw Professor Kim's ring. The guard confessed to having robbed him, explaining it was stuck and he couldn't remove it. Ki Young, returning at that moment and overhearing the mention of a ring, rushed forward, demanding to see it. Panicked, the guard tried to flee but was tackled by Ki Young. Seeing the ring, Ki Young, suspecting the guard of murdering his father, flew into a blind rage and began choking him. Seok tried to intervene, but it was too late. The two men struggled, tumbling over the cliff edge. Utterly dismayed, Seok could only clutch his head in despair. The security guard was dead, and a critically injured Ki Young lay in intensive care. With all leads seemingly severed, Seok was left with only Professor Kim's ring. He raced to the hospital, entered Professor Choi's room, and placed the ring on the desk. "What did you do to Professor Kim? Did you get rid of him? If you had just been honest about wanting him gone, I would have gladly done it for you. I was such a fool. You're a hypocrite. You thought you were different from me, and you were ashamed of being found out. So you pushed me away, didn't you?" Professor Choy remained silent, simply turning and leaving. On his way home, he deliberately sped past speed cameras, ensuring he was recorded. Upon arriving, he instructed his housekeeper to make him porridge and then dismissed him early. After preparing the porridge and bringing it upstairs, the housekeeper noticed Professor Choy was in the shower. He left the food and departed. Unbeknownst to him, Professor Choy had already slipped out of the house. He drove to a secluded cabin nestled deep within a deserted forest, where he kept a white car hidden, Professor Kim's car. He recalled a time when Professor Kim, upon opening the car door, had gotten something on his hand. Professor Choy had offered him a wet wipe. After wiping his hand, Professor Kim had brought it to his nose and sniffed. Back in the present, Professor Choy met with Detective Lee. Just as before, Detective Lee opened the car door and got something in his hand. Professor Choy offered him a wipe as well. It turned out Professor Choy had arranged the meeting to discuss something concerning Detective Yang. Detective Lee revealed he knew the hair on the victim's clothing belonged to a Rottweiler. Coincidentally, Seok owned several Rottweilers, an unusual pet for a neurosurgeon. Mid-sentence, Detective Lee suddenly succumbed to an overwhelming drowsiness. Shortly after, Professor Choy was alone in the car, wearing leather gloves, calmly listening to music. He flashed back to the moment he had held a knife to Professor Kim's throat, forcing him to make one last phone call to his son. Years ago, Professor Choy held a scalpel to Professor Kim's throat, forcing him to make a final call to his son. After the call ended, Professor Choy stabbed him, then handed him a cloth to staunch the bleeding. Professor Kim stumbled away, but Professor Choy cornered him, and he fell down a cliff. Believing him dead, Professor Choy left. Unbeknownst to him, Professor Kim survived, rescued by Mrs. Ra. Professor Choy had tasked her with finding land in the mountains. She found several suitable plots, but he chose one infested with wild dogs, which even the owner couldn't handle. Curious, she followed him and witnessed the attack. Too afraid to go to the police, she saved Professor Kim. He suffered severe brain damage, unable to remember his name. Mrs. Ra admitted him to a mental hospital under a false identity. He died 3 months ago in a nursing home. After confirming Professor Kim's death, Professor Choy returned to the cliff and threw his ring down. With all loose ends tied up, he believed the secret was safe. Seok, distraught, hunts wild boar for 2 days and nights without rest or food. Young Ju urges her to rest and confide in him, but she angrily dismisses him. The wild boars bear the brunt of her rage. When Professor Choy visits Ki Young in the hospital, the doctor gives a grim prognosis. Leaving, he encounters Seok. "Are you planning to send Ki Young after his father?" she asks menacingly. "He's like that because you interfered," Professor Choy says, revealing that dog hair was found on the nurse's clothes. "We're in the same boat, aren't we?" Seok agrees not to report him for Professor Kim's murder, acknowledging he was once a great teacher. However, she still refuses to operate on him. Some wounds run too deep. Detective Yang is struggling with the illegal surgery case, compounded by Detective Lee's disappearance. He orders a review of all security footage from that night, tracing Lee's movements after leaving the station. A rookie officer suspects Chairman Min's involvement, as Lee mentioned him before vanishing. Checking Lee's call logs, Detective Yang discovers his last call was to Professor Choy. Detective Lee had been secretly leaking case information to the gangsters, specifically the boss Seok operated on. He also identified Chairman Min as the police informant, receiving a hefty bribe in return. Detective Yang questions Professor Choy about the call, who claims they were supposed to meet, but he couldn't due to illness. "We were going to meet because of you," he adds. He said you were taking bribes. Detective Yang, skeptical, says he'll investigate. He's already sent officers to Professor Choi's house, but Choy anticipated this and left no evidence. Youngju dines alone at Mary's restaurant. She's relieved to be rid of her brother. She asks about Seok, who hasn't been eating lately, a concern Youngju shares. Seok is home, brooding over Professor Choi's words. Hyun-ho checks on her, worried by Youngju's concern. None of them have had any surgery cases recently. Seok wishes she were in prison, operating all day. Just eat, sleep, and operate, she says. I'd even take a life sentence. Hyun-ho says he and Youngju would follow her. He'd be there as a doctor, but Youngju would be there solely for her, unconditionally loyal. He truly cares about you, Hyun-ho observes. Surprisingly, someone is so devoted to the eccentric Seok. She remembers meeting Youngju, introduced by Hyun-ho. The young man had a malignant brain tumor but refused surgery, even when Seok offered to operate for free. She realized he was afraid of surgery and wanted a peaceful death. There's no such thing as a peaceful death with this, she told him. As the tumor grows, you'll have constant splitting headaches, nausea, and vomiting. It will be slow and agonizing. Dying during surgery is instant, like falling asleep and not waking up. If you want peace, this is the better way. Youngju agreed to the surgery, which was successful. Seok asked him to sing a song as thanks, but he just stared blankly. Back in the present, gangsters arrive at Youngju's pharmacy while he's cleaning. Their demeanor suggests trouble. The next day, Seok discovers Youngju is missing. He lies about being at school, and then at the movies with a friend. The gangsters have captured and beaten him. They accuse him of killing the nurse, or perhaps it was his boss. Only the two of you were there, they say. Youngju initially stays silent, but when they threaten to bring in Seok, he confesses to protect her. Having received Min's phone number from an informant, Detective Yang calls to arrange a meeting. After speaking with Detective Lee, Min calls Professor Choy. Threatening to expose Seok's illegal surgeries, he demands to meet immediately, but Professor Choy declines, already having another appointment. He appears to suspect Choy. That night, Min brings his men to meet Professor Choy, who offers him refuge in his luxurious apartment. Min knows about Hyun-ho and Seok's illegal activities, but hasn't told the police, waiting to see who offers the better deal. When he asks if Choy has dealt with Seok, the professor fantasizes about killing her, but it's just a fleeting thought. Min stands up to Detective Yang, playing mind games and pressuring Professor Choy. After Choy leaves, Min calls his client with good news. A VIP who requests the best surgeon in Korea. Seok can't find Youngju at the cinema. He calls, or rather, the gangsters call using his phone. Arriving at their hideout, she finds him badly beaten. The boss gets straight to the point, asking about Moran. If the police dig, they'll find me and my gang, he says. I need to know what I'm dealing with. The kid confessed, but he didn't have the guts. I know you did it. Seok doesn't deny it, assuring him she's cleaned up everything and he won't be implicated. He shows her a picture of Min, ordering her to ensure he can't talk to the police. Driving home, Seok abruptly stops, asking Youngju if he wants to move to the Philippines. We could open a pharmacy there, she says. What's wrong with you? He asks. Are you losing it? I'm sick of this place. Let's just pack up and leave. You said you'd follow me anywhere, she reminds him. I thought you meant it. Suddenly, fire trucks race past, heading toward Seok's house. She rushes back to find the storage shed engulfed in flames, where she kept her 3 dogs. She's devastated as the shed burns to the ground. Mrs. Ra started the fire on Professor Choi's orders, destroying evidence of Seok's murders. Seok calls the professor, demanding to meet. She speeds to the meeting point and slams her car into the back of his. Her eyes blaze with fury. Not satisfied, she reverses and hits him again. This time, he gets out, calmly lighting a cigarette as if taunting her. She floors the accelerator, aiming for him, but at the last second, swerves and drives away. For a solitary person like Seok, losing her dogs is like losing her children, her closest companions. She looks at their burned collars, heartbroken and in tears. Min suddenly appears, an old acquaintance. He had previously approached Hyun-ho and Seok for surgery, but they refused after learning it involved illegal organ trafficking. After exchanging pleasantries, he presents a case file for a patient needing brain surgery. Seok firmly refuses. He turns to Hyun-ho, asking, how can you work with someone like her? Seok is enraged, wanting to strangle him. Like attracts like, indeed. Min reminds her of a 120 million won debt, including interest. Now she can't refuse. They're taken to a luxurious yacht, suggesting a wealthy and powerful patient. The surgery requires 2 surgeons. The second surgeon arrives, Professor Choy. COK glares at him, furious. Back when Professor Choy first returned to Korea, Professor Song often complained about the troublesome COK. She showed up to orientation with just a backpack, accompanied by a social worker, he'd said. Professor Choy sympathized, having also been a poor student among wealthy peers. Professor Song described COK as mentally unstable, exploiting her academic standing to secure scholarships and financial aid. Once, loan sharks stormed the classroom demanding money from her. She'd resorted to predatory lenders out of desperation. If she needs money, she should get a part-time job, Professor Song complained. But COK said she didn't have time for that. I only have time to study, she declared. I want to learn everything. Professor Song showed Professor Choi Seok's residency application. Read this, he said. You'll understand why I hate her. Professor Choi kept the application, sometimes rereading it. Back in the present, COK questions Min. Why choose Professor Choi and me? He explains the patient requested the best surgeon in Korea. Professor Choi will be the lead surgeon. He adds, you just keep quiet. Young Ju is awestruck by the state-of-the-art operating room, rivaling top hospitals. He worries about COK not being the lead surgeon, fearing a clash with Professor Choi during the operation. The yacht sets sail. COK tearfully throws her dog's collars into the sea. Professor Choi approaches. Why are you here? She asks. You don't need the money. I'm curious to observe your criminal life, he replies. Still upset about the dogs? You made a mistake, and I cleaned up your mess. Be grateful. I could have just left them there. Why burn them alive? She cries. They were just dogs. COK explodes, attacking him with her umbrella, avenging her pets. Young Ju and Hyen Ho intervene, possibly saving his life. COK returns to her room, still fuming. Young Ju pleads with her outside to no avail. Min, aware of the situation, warns him to control COK. If she jeopardizes this surgery, none of us will leave this ship alive, he threatens. Professor Choi questions Hyen Ho about working with COK. She has serious psychological problems, he remarks. Hyen Ho defends her, saying, stop bullying her. He's found a skilled surgeon to operate on Professor Choi's brain, but Choi insists on COK. She's the best, he says. I trained her. All her skills and knowledge come from me. I'm not bullying her. She owes me everything and refuses to repay the debt. These are debts you'll never owe anyone. Hyen Ho replies pointedly. Meanwhile, Alan Kim has returned to Korea. Mrs. Ra picks him up and takes him to Professor Choi's villa. Kim wants to speak with the professor, but Mrs. Ra says he's unavailable. The next morning, Min brings Professor Choi to meet the patient, Kim Yoon-tae, the leader of a religious cult. He stresses the importance of his survival. He's sick, but can't go to a hospital, having claimed immortality to his followers. He even tries to recruit Professor Choi, urging him to find faith. Young Ju brings COK food, but she refuses to eat. Mentioning Professor Choi further irritates her. Min arrives, telling her she shouldn't have hit her teacher. COK questions the late-night surgery schedule. He explains it's the patient's request, wanting to feel like he's sleeping through the procedure. The customer is always right. He shrugs. Hyen Ho reveals the patient is Kim Yoon-tae. COK expresses her disgust. The cult has over 200,000 followers, explaining the resources for a private surgery on a yacht. Young Ju worries they'll be killed if they make a mistake. Professor Choi's hands are shaking badly. COK observes, I'll be doing the endoscopic procedure, so keep an eye on him. If it's that serious, he should say something. He's too proud, and only cares about himself. At the police station, the team is being reprimanded. Detective Lee has been missing for 2 weeks with no leads, and Min has vanished. Detective Yang requests 1 more week. They arrest a smuggling boss, who provided Min's phone number. Professor Choi injects his last dose of painkillers. It's the only way he can perform the surgery. Finally, Kim Yoon-tae is brought to the operating room. Min introduces COK as Professor Choi's best student. Kim Yoon-tae dismisses her as a child. She retorts that he's too old for surgery. He demands she explain the procedure. This doesn't faze COK. Your tumor is in a difficult location. She explains. Dr. Choi will approach it from above, while I use an endoscopic approach through the sinuses. We'll remove it from both sides. Still concerned about Professor Choi's tremors, COK tells him to switch places if he has any problems. He stubbornly refuses. As COK removes the tumor, he orders her to remove more. COK immediately objects, but he's so insistent that she reluctantly complies. Meanwhile, Detective Yang interrogates the smuggling boss. He'd planned to help Min escape to China, but a patrol foiled the attempt. Detective Yang had promised leniency in exchange for Min's phone number, but now, desperate, he reneges. The boss is forced to call Min. Hearing Detective Yang's voice, Min tries to hang up, but Yang threatens to charge him with Detective Lee's murder. During the surgery, Professor Choi's hand trembles, causing the patient to bleed. COK asks if they should switch places, but he closes his eyes for a moment and then continues. Young Ju, clumsy in his first surgery, irritates COK. The professor condescendingly questions her focus. "You're too arrogant," he says. "No one likes you. You're dangerously impulsive, selfish, and ungrateful." "Grateful to whom?" she retorts. He said, "You don't appreciate me, but I appreciate you. The times we worked together were the most exciting and fulfilling of my life. So I am grateful, very much so. I hope you believe that. I never knew teaching could be so rewarding until you." Touched by his unexpected sincerity, COK tears up. The surgery is successful, and Professor Choy breathes a sigh of relief. COK, lost in thought, seeks him out. Still awkward, she tells him to speak his mind if he has something to say. "It's no secret you hate me," she adds. "I don't hate you," he says. "Quite the opposite. I felt the same way when we worked together at the hospital. Those were the happiest days of my life. I loved working there more than anything. But now, looking back, those days feel like torture." "Is this the last time we'll operate together?" she asks softly. "Thank you for everything." Yu Yang, thinking Professor Choy is ill, visits him and finds Alan Kim there. He mentions an upcoming collaboration with COK on a complex case. Looking at the scans, Yu Yang realizes how serious Professor Choi's condition is. Hyun Ho usually stays to monitor patients after surgery, and COK seems disappointed that Professor Choy left early. He hasn't gone home. He has Mrs. Ra drive him to the pier, where he rereads Seok's residency application. "You sent this to Professor Song," she'd written. "You already hated me, didn't you?" "I knew that, but I was determined to become a neurosurgeon, no matter what. You might not understand how much this means to me, but that's why I applied for the neurosurgery residency program. Since I was a child, my mind has never stopped racing, every minute of every hour. It prevents me from doing anything. I can't eat or sleep because my mind won't be quiet. It's like tiny explosions going off in my brain every second. I love it, but it's also excruciating. Teacher said I was intelligent, but lacked focus. But it's not my fault. I believe there's a tiny worm living in my brain. This worm is constantly crawling through the folds and crevices, making me think. That's why I have headaches, can't sleep at night, can't focus. I wish I could crack open my skull and catch it. But I can't. I knew it was a ridiculous idea." COK's application continued. "The human brain isn't meant to be opened, especially not by its owner. But the first time I stepped into an operating room and saw a real human brain, I felt the magic of its labyrinth. It was so intricately woven, with winding pathways, so delicate and detailed. And in that moment, my mind finally stopped racing. For the first time, I wasn't distracted. I was entering uncharted territory. I was the only person in the entire world allowed to see this brain, this maze, this universe." Now we understand Professor Choi's fascination with COK and her application. Her story mirrored his own. Min invites COK and Young Ju to celebrate, but he has an ulterior motive. Threatened by Detective Yang, he plans to hand over COK in exchange for leniency. But COK is no pushover. Pretending a headache, she asks Young Ju to buy medicine, her eyes fixed on Min. He intends to lure her to a meeting point and deliver her to Detective Yang. When he returns, she's gone. As he searches, she reappears, suggesting they talk privately. "Somewhere it's just the two of us." Just then, Yu Yang calls, asking for Professor Choy. His condition is critical, he says urgently. He doesn't have much time left. Get him to a hospital immediately. In the distance, Detective Yang spots Min and COK. Suddenly, COK turns back, seemingly seeing Professor Choy dragging Min away. Just then, Youngju returns, noticing the bloodstains and approaching the police. He frantically pulls COK away. In a narrow alley, she receives a text from an unknown number, instructing her to meet at the red lighthouse. Arriving there, Youngju finds Min's car keys. They locate the car, finding a stash of fake license plates inside. COK calls Yu Yang for an update on Professor Choi's condition. He says he's reviewed the MRI scans, and surgery is no longer an option. COK, convinced she can still operate, demands he send her the scans. Detective Yang arrives to find them gone, with only a trail of blood remaining. Soon, the police discover Min's body. Professor Choy calls Alan Kim, thanking him for the painkillers, though wishing he'd sent more. He says he'll return tomorrow to discuss the surgery. That night, COK anxiously awaits the scans from Yu Yang. Hearing her confirm that Professor Choy killed Min, Young Ju worries about him. I wonder if he's disposed of the body yet. He says, if it weren't for him, we'd be in jail. He even provided a getaway car. And what? COK scoffs. Are you going to send him a thank you card? Yu Yang finally sends Professor Choi's MRI scans. The tumor is worse than the CT scan. He showed Hyun-ho. He lied to us again. COK says, he's this sick, and he still killed someone for you. You won't get away with this. I know how much he means to you. Young Ju paces nervously, while COK stares at the scans, troubled. The medical examiner concludes that Min was killed by a thin, sharp object, about a centimeter wide. The killer stabbed him in the spleen, between the ribs. She explains, likely intentional, to cause internal bleeding and control the blood flow, preventing immediate unconsciousness so they could move the body. The external wound was small, minimizing external blood loss, and allowing the blood to pool internally. This explains why they weren't noticed leaving the scene. If my theory is correct, the perpetrator has medical knowledge, possibly a doctor. My impression is the killer worked quickly and cleanly. Security footage reveals only the killer's back. The police suspect it's the illicit surgeon Min was going to turn in. Someone with medical training, and possibly a criminal record. Detective Yang is annoyed by Detective Song, from another precinct constantly hovering around his team. In truth, Detective Yang knows who the killer is. He glimpsed Professor Choy leading Min into the alley. It's a cruel irony, discovering his longtime friend is a murderer. Detective Song leaks the information to the gangster boss, who is surprised the killer is male, not female. After the call, the boss stares at the video of COK's miraculous surgery that saved his life. A few days later, Hyun-ho returns to find COK and Young Ju waiting at his clinic. Noticing a bandage on his hand, COK removes it to reveal a human bite mark. That creepy cult leader. She exclaims, you should have bitten him back. Why are you so passive? Find out where he lives. Why? Hyun-ho asks, so I can bite him back. She replies matter-of-factly. Young Ju laughs, reminding COK of Professor Choy. She asks Hyun-ho to find an operating room for his surgery. Whether he deserves it or not, I have to do this. She says, save his life first, then we'll see. Reviewing the MRI, Hyun-ho confirms the professor's condition is worse than they thought. The tumor is wrapped around the cerebral artery. COK observes, we might have to remove the entire artery and perform a bypass graft. She performed a similar surgery last year, and the patient nearly died from blood loss. It was her first bypass graft. This time, she's confident she can do it. Hyun-ho agrees and promises to find an or three. Professor Kim introduces Alan Kim to the hospital's senior doctors. The younger doctors are impressed. He's recruited such a renowned surgeon from America. It turns out, Alan Kim was invited to collaborate on research for cerebral artery bypass grafts, one of the most complex and delicate neurosurgical procedures, with extremely high risks. He's eager to meet COK, her surgical video reminding him of a friend. He was decisive in the or, like a high-performance machine. Kim recalls, but outside, a complete jerk. He excelled at turning strangers into enemies. A genius who knows he's a genius is the worst, right? People avoided him, but I enjoyed his company. Being around him pushed me to achieve more, but that friend is gone now. It's unclear if he's being sincere or subtly referencing Professor Choy. He asks again when he can meet COK, and Professor Choy just smiles enigmatically. Young Ju, driving, urges COK not to operate on Professor Choy due to the high risk. She's determined not to make a mistake. The gangsters summon her to meet their boss. They're taken to a mansion where the gang is having lunch. COK joins the boss, while Young Ju is kept outside. The boss mentions the police found no evidence in Min's case, but they've determined the killer is male. He's curious about who did it, but COK remains silent. He's grateful for her life-saving surgery, calling it miraculous, and offers his assistance should she need anything. Detective Yang invites Professor Choy to dinner. The professor asks what's wrong, but Yang just drinks, avoiding the question. Professor Choy presses him. The person who killed the nurse at the temple, he says, must be the same person who killed Min and Lee, right? Tell me, why did you kill Min? I can't figure it out. Someone of your status, why perform illegal surgeries? The Dr. Min was going to expose were you. You killed him, I saw it. You killed Lee too, didn't you? Professor Choy smiles cryptically. I know your secret too, he says. What secret? Yang asks. The one you're thinking about. Choy replies, The one that could ruin you in an instant. Yang, there are no more secrets between us. So, what are we going to do? Do you want to lose everything? I'm ready. Are you? Can you leave your family and go to prison? Kiang dies. At the funeral, Seok confronts Professor Choy. Hello, Kiang, she says. The man who killed your father is here too. She hounds him, demanding to know why he killed Professor Kim. Cornered, he confesses. Professor Kim had his eye on you. He reveals. He wanted you at his hospital in Los Angeles. The chairman nominated a few candidates, and that bastard chose you. Impossible. Seok scoffs. You thought I'd go with him. That bastard was a businessman, not a doctor. Professor Choy explains. He exploited young doctors, piling on surgeries to line his own pockets. You have no idea how many people he destroyed. That scoundrel. Professor Choy seethes. Stealing someone I worked so hard to train. Who did he think he was? You're right. Seok agrees. He deserved to die. I would have killed him too. Professor Choy is taken aback. What's gotten into you today? He asks, bewildered by her agreement. Suddenly, heavy rain pours down, reminding them of the day he dismissed her from the hospital. She knelt in the rain, begging for forgiveness, but he walked away. Why did you treat me like that? She'd cried. He just sighed, not explaining. Despite Professor Choi's threat, Detective Yang is surprisingly confident. You're finished, he tells Choy. But I won't be. His team reports enhanced security footage, revealing Seok at the scene. Professor Choy takes Seok to his old operating room at the hospital. Ask me anything, he says. She returns to the reason for his rejection. When I discovered you were going to kill Professor Kim, she says, I was actually happy. I felt like we were the same. But you felt exposed, didn't you? It bruised your ego. What else could I have done? Should I have sat down and discussed your murder plans with you? Is that what a good student should do? So it's true, he says quietly. But why would I be ashamed? I was actually happy at that moment. Listen, you fools. Seok had bragged back then. My teacher kills people sometimes. Just like me. We're the same. That's precisely your problem. Professor Choy had retorted. You're happy your teacher is a murderer. You're right. Seok admits now. It's not normal, but those were my true feelings. Even after you hit me and ruined my life, I didn't want you to die. Let me operate on you. What? He asks. Are you feeling sorry for me now that I'm dying? What are you talking about? She says, exasperated. I just don't want you to die. Will you have the surgery or not? Don't tell me you've given up. What's there to consider? You know you'll die without it. Or should I just kill you now and get it over with? Fine, do whatever you want. He relents. I'll find an operating room. Just don't do anything stupid, like running off and killing someone else. Despite her abrasive words, Professor Choy is touched. He informs Alan Kim. They'll tell the hospital he and Yu Yang are performing the surgery. But it will be him and Seok. Seok studies cerebral artery bypass graft techniques. Young-ju questions her. You were so smart back then. He says. They must have adored you. Adored me for pointing out their mistakes. She scoffs. You don't know me very well. Why put up with someone like me? What are you talking about? He replies. It's not that I understand you. It's because I don't understand you that I follow you, hoping one day I will. You don't know everything about me. Young-ju protests. Of course, I do. Seok replies. You're simple. Hyun-ho has found an operating room, a disused or in a private hospital, now a storage room. They can use it from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Seok is satisfied and tries to pay, but the owner refuses, saying he's doing it as a favor to Hyun-ho. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ra gives Young-ju a business card. Seok receives a call from Detective Yang, requesting her cooperation in the investigation. You must still resent Professor Choy, he says. If he'd been more lenient, you might still have your license. He put you through a lot. He must be terrifying to you. This reminds Seok of her first meeting with Professor Choy. I've staked my life on this, she declared. I want to be a great surgeon. Like you. I want to die in the operating room. Teach me everything you know. Everything. He'd asked. And what will you give me in return? Nothing, she'd replied. I'll just absorb your knowledge. He'd laughed. You are Professor Choi's weakness. Detective Yang continues. He has no reason to perform these surgeries. You do. You were the doctor Min was going to expose. You are the reason Professor Choy killed him. What are you talking about? Seok asks. Professor Choy and I despise each other. I know him too well. I've known him my whole life. He still makes time for you, after everything that's happened. Yang points out. Professor Choy doesn't forgive anyone, but he forgives you. You're his blind spot. People call you crazy. but I think he's the real madman. Before the surgery, Professor Choy cleans his office and gives Mrs. Ra a thick envelope. COK calls, confirming the order and instructing him to fast from tomorrow afternoon. She plans to pick him up, but he insists on coming alone. Mrs. Ra asks if he's told COK his plans. She'll be furious and heartbroken. She warns, yes, I'm betraying her. She'll be hurt. But what choice do I have? That's life. If I'd known you were this calculating, I wouldn't have helped you. If you don't want to help, don't force yourself, he says. What did COK say on the phone? Mrs. Ra asks. Detective Yang interrogated her for 3 hours this morning. No wonder she sounded so exhausted. That bastard. The next night, Hyen Ho and COK are ready, waiting for Professor Choy. He calls Detective Yang, instructing him to meet at an abandoned warehouse in the woods. Yang goes without hesitation. He finds the warehouse, enters, and sees a large freezer. He opens it to find Detective Lee's frozen body. COK waits for Professor Choy, but Alan Kim arrives instead. Then Professor Choy enters, confronting Detective Yang. He plays a recording of Lee confessing Yang's crimes. Arriving at a murder scene, Lee's voice says, I saw Detective Yang already there, picking up something that looked like a lighter, but he hid it when he saw me. I checked the evidence log. There was no lighter. I started investigating him, discovering he'd destroyed key evidence in multiple cases, then extorted money from the suspects. Detective Yang scoffs, claiming a confession obtained through drugs is inadmissible, but Professor Choy hired a private investigator who confirmed Lee's accusations. He confesses to everything, the illegal surgeries with Min, the nurse's murder. What are you going to do? He challenges Yang. Keep investigating and arrest me. COK is shocked when Alan Kim tells her Professor Choy won't be coming. He doesn't want to have surgery here. She asks. No, Kim replies. He had a detailed plan for his surgery. The time, the place, the personnel. This equipment and staff won't suffice. It's fine. COK insists. I'll be performing the surgery. Alan Kim smiles, holding up the painkillers Professor Choy uses. They'll cause unpredictable complications during surgery. He explains. When did he start taking them? COK demands. We have to stop him. You don't understand him at all. Kim says something that enrages COK, making her want to find Professor Choy immediately. Hyen Ho shows Young Ju the bottle. The medication is a powerful painkiller for terminal cancer patients, and its effectiveness is matched by its severe side effects. Anesthesia will be difficult. Now that you mention it, Young Ju says, he seemed too healthy for a terminal cancer patient, especially operating on that yacht. He must have been using those drugs to cope. Alan Kim reveals Professor Choi's plan. He wants COK and Kim to perform the surgery in 1 month at the New Johnson University Hospital operating room, with Hyen Ho as the anesthesiologist. You won't find Professor Choy until then. Kim explains. He's hiding from you. Once you know about the drugs, you'll want to operate immediately, but he doesn't want that. He wants his condition to worsen. Why wait until it's more severe? Unless he wants to die on the operating table. COK goes to Professor Choi's villa but finds it empty. She sees the desk lamp he gave her. She'd left it in her dorm room after being dismissed from the hospital, but he retrieved it. The next day, Detective Yang is called to the warehouse. A woman reported the crime early that morning. The warehouse belongs to Professor Choy. Police meticulously examine everything, including the glass and cigarette he used last night. COK finds his office cleared out. Alan Kim enters, and COK asks why Professor Choy wants to die on the operating table. Kim confirms her suspicion. Professor Choy wants her to fail, to finally experience defeat. That damn teacher. She fumes. Why should I fail? So I can collapse and weep? So I can learn my limits as a surgeon. What if she succeeds? Kim asks. She won't. He replies. I'll make sure of it. COK is furious, already feeling defeated. She questions Kim's involvement. Do you want me to fail too? She asks. He replies. I'm betting you'll succeed, and takes her to the new operating room, designed for clandestine surgeries. Officially, Yu Yang will participate, but COK will be the real surgeon. I don't understand why he involved you, she says. Perhaps he thought you'd be stimulating for me. Kim suggests. He's doing all this for you. He adds. Stimulating. She scoffs. I'm not easily impressed. So, what's the plan? She asks. The scalp arteries are too weak from the medication. Kim explains. We'll have to use the saphenous vein, a leg vein bypass graft, to the cerebral artery. It's feasible. You're not surprised? He asks. A savinous vein graft is new territory for us. It's fine, she says confidently. You're the only one worried. Anyway, a month is too long. I'll find him. I'll bring him back. Young Ju puzzles over the business card Mrs. Ra gave him, saying it would be useful. Professor Choy strolls through Han River Park, growing tired and falling asleep on a bench. Mrs. Ra finds him. He reflects on arriving in Seoul at 17, having only heard stories about the city. This is his first time truly seeing it. She gives him a burner phone. A sudden, intense headache grips him, but he endures it. Seok seeks out the gangster boss, reminding him of his promise to repay her. If you're a man of your word, don't forget, she says. He tells her to get some rest. Mrs. Ra visits Hyun Ho, revealing Professor Choi's hiding place. Hyun Ho finds him slumped on a sofa. He rushes to check on him, finding him conscious but weak. Hyun Ho administers and the fourth. When Professor Choy recovers, Hyun Ho urges him to abandon the surgery. You're in no condition for this, he says. Even Seok can't save you now. Why endure the pain? I'll take care of you until the end. You're a good doctor. Professor Choy replies, but there's something you don't understand. Not everyone wants a peaceful death, so don't stand in my way. Let me die on my terms. Detective Yang holds a press conference, announcing that fingerprints and DNA at the crime scenes belong to Professor Choy, issuing a warrant for his arrest for the murders of Detective Lee, the nurse, and Min. Seok is stunned by the news. Young Ju meets Mrs. Ra and asks about Professor Choi's whereabouts. She assures him he won't be caught and that Hyun Ho is caring for him. She asks for discretion, but Young Ju immediately tells Seok. Mrs. Ra anticipated this. The gangster boss asks Detective Song to track Hyun Ho's phone. Professor Choy struggles to open his last bottle of painkillers. His hands too weak. Hyun Ho helps him. Professor Choy reflects on his belief that the operating room was a sanctuary. At least in there, I wanted to be pure, like a freshly laundered surgical gown. He says, that time, I was so angry I lost control. Thankfully, Seok stopped me, but I was ashamed. I couldn't face her, so I dismissed her, even as she knelt and begged. A teacher, reduced to such cowardice by petty pride. If you feel guilty, don't let Seok operate. Hyun Ho says, what if she fails and it traumatizes her? Will she ever operate again? Surgeon Seok is at her peak. Professor Choy replies, her pride is immense. She's most alive and exhilarated in CE. There's no greater satisfaction. For surgeons like us, it's hard to go further. Seok is the best now like I was, but I want her to surpass even that. I couldn't, but she can. She needs to shed tears for a patient to break her own limits. She needs to fail to save someone she desperately wants to save. Her heart needs to break. She needs to experience the moment she can no longer hold a scalpel. I've wronged her. So even if she doesn't want it, I have to give her everything I can. Seok is furious with Young Ju for not telling her about the business card. He relays Mrs. Ra's message. Professor Choy made a deal with Detective Yang, confessing to everything to protect Seok. Enraged, Seok goes to the park with Young Ju, but Professor Choy isn't there. Detective Yang is reprimanded for not capturing Professor Choy. He receives a text from Seok. The gangster boss, having tracked Hyun Ho, arrives with his men and calls Professor Choy. Do you want to come out? He asks, or should I come in? Professor Choy finally agrees to meet. Come arrest me later. Seok tells the gangsters. Detective Yang arrives at the meeting point to find Seok waiting. I hear you made a deal with my teacher, she says. He confessed to everything. Said he only had a month left to live. He'll contact you before he dies. Then you can arrest him. Case closed. Surgery will fix it. Seok insists. Die? I'll operate on him. Don't. Yang warns. We had a deal. Let him die. He has to die so I can live. By the way, detective, Seok adds, I killed that nurse. Don't touch my teacher. Understand. She's recorded the conversation as evidence. She receives a text from the gangster boss and leaves to find Professor Choy. Detective Yang intercepts her, slamming his car into hers. He drags her out, intending to break her hands. She kicks him away, but he smashes her phone. Young Ju, regaining consciousness, intervenes, shielding Seok and taking the blows. Yang pulls him away. Seok stabs Yang in the leg and kills him. After hearing Professor Choi's explanation, the boss sends a message telling Seok not to come, urging her to follow the professor's plan. Professor Choy confides in Hyun Ho. Seok is my tragic youth, he says. I don't need to ask, I know she lived like me. She's eerily similar even in her flaws. If the mind had DNA, we'd be blood relatives. COK calls the boss, asking to speak with Professor Choy. Do you know Detective Yang? She asks. He's with me now, but I can't put you through. Why are you running away? You're driving me crazy. Come here. Alone. Professor Choy rushes to the scene, immediately recognizing that COK has killed Detective Yang. He sees a blood-soaked young Jew sitting dazedly. He carefully picks up Yang's car keys and finds his body in the trunk. Are you a butcher? He asks COK. Why kill a detective? If you were in my shoes, you would have done worse. She replies. I would have been more discreet. He says. You told me to wait. You wanted me to sit back and watch you die, didn't you? Some grand lesson? You pathetic teacher. Did you think you could hide from me? What lesson? I told you I didn't want one. What about the body? He asks. Can you handle it? No. She admits. You have to help me. Don't cry. He says. Save your tears for the operating room. Why are you doing this to me? She cries. I wanted to keep my promise. You wanted me to teach you everything. He reminds her. You said you wanted it all. Can't handle this. And you want it all. I don't need anything more. She says softly. Just live. You just have to live. If you die, I'll become even more reckless. I'll kill people every day. You can run away, but what about me? What am I supposed to do? Every book has a last page. He says. I've reached mine. There's no next chapter. Why not? She pleads. You have to see me. See how well I do. Do you hate me that much? Why are you doing this? I hate you. He says, his voice breaking. I have to teach you something more before I die. But this is the only way I know how. You've had enough. You don't need anything more. Damn it. Professor Choy says. If you keep this up, I won't go through with the surgery. I'm serious. Why? COK cries. You might not last a month. He will call her when it's time. COK waits anxiously. The day arrives. The team assembles at Yanshin Hospital. She visits Professor Choy before the surgery. He's aged significantly. In less than a month, he extends his hand, but she refuses. Save your thank yous for after the surgery. She says. I won't fail. I learned from the best. The critical surgery begins. Sometime later, Mrs. Ra returns Seok's dogs, revealing she hid them, not killed them. The chairman of a renowned neurosurgery hospital requests COK to operate on him, choosing her over his own hospital's doctors. She waits for someone before starting. Finally, the person arrives. A familiar gait, unmistakable even without seeing their face. It's Professor Choy. And that's the end of the series. We hope for Season 2 to reunite with this extraordinary teacher and student. Subscribe for more great shows. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and comment.